These divisions, they are man-made. We have vice. We have vice, but we cannot see. We've got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide black family. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Cuban or Dominican or Panamanian. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Jamaican or American, Haitian or Brazilian. One Africa. Time has come for us to get free. It's time we break the chains of slavery. We've got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide black family. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Mexican, Colombian, or Boricano. No matter where you're from, Africa is still your home. Belizean or Peruvian, or Honduran. One Africa. Together. All they want us to do is keep on killing one another all around the world. One Africa, all around the world. One Africa, all around the world.
Black, I'm an African. From higher heights, I'm a militant. West Africa, me from an Vatican. We were born with the light, we under the sun. Repatriation is a must if you liberate yourself. We tired of the war and fight. Cause there is nothing you can do. Know yourself, you know your history. Work out for uplift to new life. Freedom we need. God, I'm a mother of civilization. East to the world. One love, my religion. Together we are gonna build up the nation. No matter where you come from, we are one blood. Accept one another whenever you touch road. Listen me, see links to the globe. All for one for all, so the thing go.
We got to find a new way to be. This is a worldwide black family.
Oop, there we go. Hey, greetings, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I see we have like a larger than usual crowd. I assume because you're excited for the guests we will have on for PE in just a moment. But it's very good to see y'all. Hey, Monica. Hey, Bird. Hey, Sam. Hey, Obiomo. Hey, Leah. Hey, Big Teal. The whole crew is here. Greetings, welcome. My name is Onya Sanwu. This is Weekly Pan-African News, presented to you by the All African People's Revolutionary Party New Mexico chapter. The All African People's Revolutionary Party is a revolutionary pan-African socialist mass political party with chapters throughout the world. Our biggest and most dynamic chapters are at home in Africa, but we have chapters all over the United States, in Canada, in Europe, in the Caribbean. We are growing daily, and we present to you these political education programs from every corner of the globe. This is ours. We, of course, started the show back at the beginning of the pandemic, which is still actually happening, quite as it's kept. We started the show at the beginning of the pandemic because we understood that our people are going to be at extreme risk of getting seriously ill from COVID-19. We understood that no support was going to be coming from these raggedy capitalist imperialist states. And so we were like, we can't gather our folks in person indoors and get them sick. So how do we continue to build with them? How do we continue to learn with them? And this show is just one of several ways we came up with to stay connected to y'all during these lockdowns and half-ass lockdowns and so on and so forth. So if you're a frequent watcher of the show, then you know that there are a couple of things that we do at the beginning of every single episode. One of the first things we do is talk about who we are. I'm Moni Sandu. I'm a cadre with the APRP. And the second thing that we always do is that we want to call in an ancestor. And the reason why we call in an ancestor is because we understand as revolutionary African people struggling against capitalism, colonialism, and imperialism for the liberation of ourselves and our land, that we are part of a continuum of struggle that began the very first moment the very first European colonizer, or cracker, set foot on the shores of Africa with the intent to enslave, loot, and steal. Centuries ago, we have been fighting for our liberation as a people for over 500 years. It is a continuous fight that we are a part of, which means that we would not be here doing this work. I would not be here talking to you without the contributions of our ancestors. And so, of course, we have to honor them. We have to lift them up. We have to tell the truth about them in the society full of lies. And we have to learn from them. God dang it. So the ancestor we want to call in today is none other than Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral. If you've watched the show before, we have talked in depth about the revolution in Guinea-Bissau led by the masses of African people under the leadership of the PIGC, which overthrew Portuguese colonialism in that African nation and also toppled a fascist dictatorship in Europe. You're welcome, Europeans, you ingrates. But Amilcar Cabral was one of the founders of the PIGC, the mass people's organization that led that anti-colonial struggle. He is a giant of Pan-Africanism, a giant of revolutionary theory, one of the leading minds of our struggle for liberation in the modern age. So like I said, he was a founder of the PIGC. The PIGC is the organization that waged the anti-colonial struggle in Guinea-Bissau. He was a contemporary and a peer of men like Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Samora Machel. He was within the PIGC and the revolution in Guinea-Bissau, staunchly committed to women's liberation within the struggle against colonialism. He was on the front lines of the fight to liberate African women in Guinea-Bissau, and he made sure that happened by equipping those women to liberate themselves, by developing their revolutionary capacity within the PIGC to be in leadership roles, to engage in military leadership, to engage in the political development of their people. So he was like, women are going to lead. Women are going to free themselves within this organization, and they did. So anyway, Amilcar Cabral is an understudied theorist, but he's someone that I highly recommend people look into. I highly recommend people read his speeches and learn about what he thought, because a lot of the stuff that he was talking about around class contradictions within colonized nations, about the importance of developing a revolutionary culture, about military and political strategy, all contain lessons and like nuggets of knowledge that we could highly use today. Like, we desperately need them. So we want to honor Amilcar Cabral as the ancestor we're lifting up on the show today, and we encourage you to read that man's words, learn from that man's words. A good place to start is The Weapon of Theory speech. It's so rich, it's so deep. Read it in your study circles, and we honor Amilcar Cabral. So that was the ancestor. The second, the third thing? I think it's the third thing that we always do at the beginning of every show is that we do a land acknowledgement. We are speaking to y'all from occupied Tiwa territory, also known as the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico. But Albuquerque, New Mexico, like the entirety of the Western Hemisphere was built on land that was stolen from indigenous nations. And we as African people deeply understand what it is to have your land stolen, because the same people that stole land in this hemisphere stole land in Africa too. So when we say that we are honoring land was stolen, when we say we are lifting up the people who this land actually belongs to, we are not doing it metaphorically. We are not saying it just to say it. We are saying it because we are in unequivocal solidarity with the struggles of the indigenous nations of the Western Hemisphere to get their land back. We are in unequivocal solidarity with the struggles of the Palestinian people to get their land back. And we are fighting for our land back in Africa and fighting for land back all around the world. It's not a metaphor. We are dead serious. We are taking the land back. Cry about it if you want to. Anyway, so that was the intro. That is what we do every single show. And the other thing that we do every single show is that we always have a political education segment. You are not going to go to any All African People's Revolutionary Party event in person or virtually anywhere in the world without getting some form of political education. And the reason why we do that is because we understand, as ancestor Malcolm X said, that you cannot organize a sleeping people. You must wake them up and then you get some action. The capitalist system that exploits and oppresses us puts us to sleep, makes us confused, gets us fighting amongst ourselves instead of fighting amongst our true enemies. And so the purpose of political education is to develop our understanding of who the enemy actually is, why they are our enemy, and how to take those fools out, period. So this is why we do it. This is why every PRP event, including these shows, has PE. It is the most important thing that we can be doing right now to organize our people, to prepare our people to wage a revolution. So we always do it. And so the PE topic for the show today is why the squad is not on our side. For folks that are fortunate enough not to live in the snakes or not to know who these people are, I'll explain who the squad is. They are a group of junior House representatives who are extremely diverse, who are almost entirely women. There's like a Palestinian up in there, Rashida Tlaib, there's a Puerto Rican in there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, there's a Somali in there, Ilhan Omar. So these are mostly women, very diverse, occupy a lot of intersecting identities oppressed by imperialism, working within the U.S. government. And we've been told that these people are a force for change from the inside within the Democratic Party, but as we will discuss in a moment, they fall far short of that particular analysis. And so to have this conversation, I want to bring on my comrades, my homies, if they can hear me, Salifu and Erica, who are both, alongside myself and Ajamu Umi, editors with Hood Communists. Hey, y'all.
Hey, peace.
Peace.
There's a delay in my video. It's kind of weird. Hopefully it doesn't like make the interview awkward. But let me like give y'all some space to talk about who you are and your analysis of the squad.
Go ahead, Erica.
Well, my name is Erica, or Ricky, and I'm an editor of Hood Communist. I am the CC member of Black Alliance for Peace. I'm also a member of Ujima People's Progress Party, and I am disgusted by the squad. I cannot stand any of them. I'm very biased in that. I don't hide that. I think they're useless, and yeah, that's where we at.
Peace, Africans. I'm Salifu, member of the Low Country Action Committee. Always rep my set, and the Black Alliance for Peace. And my analysis of the squad. I mean, it's just hard to take them seriously. Like it's for that. That's how I feel on a personal level. It's hard to take them seriously. I think the thing that concerns me the most about the squad, though, is that despite how I feel, they are taken very seriously in mainstream discourse, and that's kind of frightening. So I feel like every chance we get to debunk and shit on the myth that somehow this group of 4 people just fell out of the sky and is here to save the day, I think every chance we get to do that, we should.
Thanks, y'all. Deeply agree. I feel like the squad are held up as like our saviors, as like a new hope. Like people were like turning on the Democratic Party. They were sick of the Clintons. They were sick of the Obamas. They were like, this is raggedy. And then all of a sudden, like these young upstarts come out and they're like, it's better now. See, you believe in them. But as Salifu said, it's really important to deconstruct how they're actually being used, what's actually happening. And so on the show today, I was hoping that we could break down the squad and their domestic policy, the squad and their foreign policy, show how it's all messed up, and then talk about why that's happening. So let's jump into domestic policy. Why does the squad fall short of being truly progressive when it comes to domestic policy within the United States?
Yeah, I can start that. I mean, most people who are familiar with the squad are mainly familiar with them through social media, through tweets and Instagram, where they talk tough. They push back against establishment Democrats, I suppose, frequently. So they hold this position of I guess like just like you said, the saviors. But they really they really consistently fall in line despite all the tough talk. So the places where it matters, like the votes, are where you don't see that tough talk. You'll see, they'll vote present if they don't want to if they don't want to shake things up too much. But they wouldn't outright do the no, or some might, and that's when they will start that conversation about an internal split. But I think domestically, from the debate on force to vote to the moratoriums on housing to funding policing, it's like evident that they're buffers for the establishment in the Democratic Party. They are not change makers as they're being presented. And I think they are like products of that false dichotomy of Democrat good and Republican bad, but like they're exasperated, that kind of dichotomy, because they like the mainstream media or progressives like to harping on like that internal struggle or the internal conflict happening between the squad and say a Nancy Pelosi. But at the end of the day, there is no actual struggle happening, just like there's no struggle between the Republicans and the Democrats. They all have sort of a fixed goal here, and that's evident when you see that they basically still vote in favor of whatever the establishment says. So they're not even challenging the Biden administration right now, currently, around COVID-19. I mean, Biden is using now, I think, what was the words? The pandemic of the unvaccinated. Where's the squad? Because the pandemic is not the unvaccinated. We're talking about, if we're going to have a pro-vaccination strategy, then the squad should be there to push back against that if they're representing their progressive constituents. Because we're talking about housing, we're talking about Medicare for all. Like all of these things are dead issues currently in Congress. They are dead issues because they're not bringing back Medicare for all. That's not coming back in Biden's administration. They said what they said. And now in the house, where we see with housing, in the next couple of months, we're going to be asked out, and there's going to be no other moratorium. And we don't see the squad step up for that. We see the tweets, we see the dancing on the streets, we see the camping on the steps, but we don't see the votes. And that's the thing that irritates me the most, because it's all these other antics that are happening that have people like disillusioned about what they're actually doing domestically. We can't even get them to push for a stimulus. What are they doing?
Did you have anything to add, Sally Poo, to that heat?
Yeah. So first of all, if y'all have never read Erica's The Squad is a Farce piece on Hood Communist, you need to read that, because that is brilliant analysis where she goes squad member by squad member and like looks at their origin, how they get to the position where they are currently, and what they've done with that position up to the date that you wrote it, which I think was in what February.
Yeah, this year.
Yeah, of this year. So I would definitely suggest that people go and read that. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that I feel like if anybody's ever read Black Power by Kwame Ture and help me. Charles Hamilton, yeah. A lot of lessons I feel like come out of that book by just examining the chapter on the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And I mentioned that I mentioned that to say that there is a blueprint in the US for what people's politics could look like what it could mean to engage electorally or like politically, if that's like the arena that people want to enter into. But a lot of the critiques that we're going to raise today of the squad could be raised about any number of people in quote unquote progressive politics, because the critiques that we're raising, you have to, unfortunately, in this society, you have to constantly remind people we're not like attacking these women or like tearing them down because they're brown or black or something like that. We're talking about people who have been like hoisted into positions of power and are falsely being advertised to the masses of people as like a escape route, as like an exit plan, as like harm reduction, as like, you know, all these things that are supposed to be positive for us when they really aren't. And so this, a part of the reason why the squad is able to get away on a domestic level with abandoning things like the fight for 15, with abandoning things like rent cancellation, with just completely letting stimulus checks drop off the table, is because the level of political education inside the belly of the beast is so low. Our class consciousness is like so low that you can do bare minimum shit, like, you know, get a tent and sit outside, or you can like get on Twitter every day and be like, I'm so sick of a government that doesn't, and pretend that you're not in that government. You can do shit like that in the United States, and people will be like, oh, they're fighting for me. I love it. Like, girl boss, like, I love it. Like, thank you, representation. I'm so grateful for your mere presence, right? And this is a game that's been ran on people in the US, particularly Africans in the US, for a very long time. It's an old game. The squad isn't doing anything new per se. I would say they're adapting to the circumstances of today, because like Onye pointed out, we were reaching kind of like a critical mass where people were like, I'm actually really not fucking with that Democratic Party shit. Like, you know, because they were so blatantly like exclusionary of the young sort of, you know, hip radical voice. People were coming out and actively being like, I don't fuck with Hillary Clinton. I know I definitely reached that point. I was like, and to this day, Hillary Clinton is going to roast in hell for all eternity. There is no redemption possible for that woman. Like, so I had millions of people were reaching that point. The Democratic Party ran like a PR campaign, and it's one of the most effective that I think they've ran in the party's history by bringing these women together who, you know, many people, depending on who you ask, will tell you may have always been grifters from the jump, or who started out with good intentions and were co-opted along the way. But ultimately, it doesn't matter right now, because right now they're being used. Like the word I think Onye used earlier is like they're being used. And so when I think about AOC specifically, like AOC was pushed to the limelight. Was it through she's not CP USA, she's DSA, yeah through DSA, through very sort of like, I'm here to represent the average worker. I'm here to represent the bartenders, the baristas, all the other identity things that you can like put on top of that. And for a lot of people, that meant like, somebody who's going to fight for a living wage for everyday people. That fight has not happened. That fight got dropped a long time ago. Okay. We're not even going to talk about immigration yet, because we haven't really even gotten to that point yet. But a lot of those fights that she came in like claiming to represent, those things get dropped. The most famous clip of AOC that stands out in my mind is the clip of her saying, if I have to be a one-term politician, and that's fine. I want to come in and make an impact. That ethos got abandoned a long time ago. We're not. Go ahead, Erica.
As soon as she won, it was abandoned. Like the first thing her campaign did was take down their support for Palestine. Like the first thing they did as soon as she won. And then she did the campaign like it was a technical issue, and it never came back up.
Yeah. And so I guess all that to say, like on a domestic level, I think the most critical thing is that people inside the belly of the beast need to understand that we are being conned. Like this is a joke. This is a joke to a lot of people at the top. Like Nancy Pelosi gets home every night and just like has the biggest laugh every time you like make your profile picture AOC and you start like sharing all these gifs of like people ripping up shit, and it's a joke for them. It's a game, and it's hurting us. Like everything Erica pointed out is killing us.
Look, you both mentioned a few times camping out in a tent. And I want to know if I want to like dive a little bit into that example, because I feel like first it has a cameo from a newer member of the squad, Cori Bush, that is kind of getting the energy AOC got at the beginning, where she came from the streets of Ferguson and she's like a movement person who became like a representative, and people think that means something different. But she was kind of at the center of an extremely performative event around the expiration of the eviction moratorium. So can y'all talk about that?
Yeah, my frustration for me is that Cori Bush, as you noted, came from organizing. So she came from that space. So for her to do what she did and essentially do it alone, not, send out a rally, not call people up to come and support her on the steps, that to me was just odd, right? Because you come from an organizing background. So you know how to get people together, especially in a moment's notice, and then to just let it pass, let the people go on vacation and then set up your camp was like, that was something I didn't understand. But I believe it was like after she had spent the full night and a full day there, she was on the Morning Joe show on MSNBC, and I swear she looked like Washington just slapped her in the face. Like she just came to terms with the reality of DC. She looked tired. She looked worn out. But she still was like skirting certain questions, not addressing certain things that were important and impactful. Like, what about in 90 days? Like, say this does pass, what's going to happen in 90 days, right? It's like she came there with her platitudes ready for the interviews, and any question that she wasn't prepared for, her handlers kind of walked her away. And that's what we were seeing day after day. And then when it did pass, and we see that clip of the, I'm not sure if it was a journalist or a random person with a cell phone, but they are literally screaming, what's going to happen in 90 days? And AOC is out there. She's like, we'll get to that road when we get, we'll come to that when we get there. Like, yeah, don't worry about that. And then Cori Bush comes and she's like, turn up the music. It's time to celebrate. And we still do not know what's going to happen to any of us in 90 days. But we celebrated that. And then we held her up on a pedestal because she's a Black woman. And this isn't easy to do. But it's like, but she didn't really do anything. She literally didn't do anything, because if you look at what's on paper, it looked like that freeze was already in the works. They were already trying to push it back or hold it off for a bit. So there was nothing significant that she did, but it does help Cori Bush as a politician because it gives her a sort of narrative now. It's similar to the narrative that AOC used to have, where this is a person who's going to go into Washington and she's going to shake things up and she's not going to take it because she comes from us. She comes from a working class background. But it's like, I don't think people understand the ways that you're forced to collude within the Democratic Party once you become a member of it. Like, there is no fighting within the party. And I think that we have seen examples of people trying to do this decade after decade who just get swallowed up or pushed out completely. Like Cynthia McKinney. Okay? And that was somebody who was actually, I guess, quote unquote, progressive, right? Because they were coming there with progressive policies and radical changes. And they told her to get the fuck out. So if they are interested in their careers as politicians, then they're not going to shake up too much. Which is why it's laughable that AOC could say what she said about being a one-term politician, because she wants to be a careerist. She wants to be Nancy Pelosi, but for the progressives, which it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So that's always my continuous frustration with them. And I see that Cori Bush, even being a newer member, because now they have a man as well, Jamal, I can't remember his last name, but they're Black and new, and they're going to get promoted as what we just seen with Rashida and Ilma, because people are kind of walking away from them. So here's a new squad, you know, but they're all essentially doing the same thing, which is not anything concrete. And even if they try to, you have to understand the position that they're in within a party that's not. I mean, look how James Clyburn came for them. Look how they shut down Nina Turner. Like, they're not going to allow this shit to happen. So we have to understand that our best bet is to organize outside of these systems. And at least to build power, at least to build political power. I'm not essentially saying that we're going to win, but we are at least starting the process of building political power from the outside, because there is no such thing as political power for us within the Democratic Party.
Thank y'all. So as we've kind of laid out on the domestic front, when it comes to the issues that are directly affecting people's lives, like housing, like the COVID-19 response, the squad is nowhere to be found, except if there's a camera and they can do something performative, and then they're all about it. But when it comes to actually following through on policies that are going to help you, they are nowhere to be found. So that's what they look like domestically. Let's talk about what they look like in foreign policy, because I feel like this is where it is also exposed. They claim a progressive label, but if you are a poor working class person outside of the United States, what does the squad mean for you? Either Erica or Salifu can answer.
Salifu, you can go.
Let's get into some things, because I feel like when it comes to the foreign policy side of the squad, it's so transparent. Like, you have to, and I think this is a part of the reason why the Democratic Party intentionally does not engage its base on foreign policy ever, particularly Africans who vote Democrat. Glenn Ford exposed this a long time ago. The Democratic Party does not engage Africans on foreign policy at all. It is almost as if they believe we don't have thoughts on internationalism at all. And I do believe with my whole heart that the Democratic Party is the driving force that has decimated the international relationship of African people in the United States with other African people around the world. But to the squad, I mean, where do we start? With Tlaib, Rashida Tlaib. First of all, as Erica points out in the article about the squad being a farce, first of all, you are a member of a party that is incredibly antagonistic toward Palestine. I mean, if we just think about how 2021 started with drone strikes in Somalia and everything that's taken place in Palestine this year, just to even be associated with the Democratic Party as a Palestinian person, I mean, I can't tell sis what to do with her life, but that's a lot off rip, just like off GP. That's like that's a lot. But we got I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the Somali. Okay, here we go. AFRICOM. When at what point in time do we have a conversation about AFRICOM? When will it? Well, the answer is never, first of all, because Nancy Pelosi will slap the shit out of anybody who starts talking about AFRICOM out the squad, and they know that. So that's never going to happen. But those are just two examples right there. The silence, really, is always the silence for me.
Yeah, to your point about them being in the party, like, I don't know if folks remember when Rashida, she quote tweeted, like did a quote retweet from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It wasn't even her tweet. She just retweeted it and had to immediately delete it, immediately under pressure from the party. She's a Palestinian. You know what I'm saying? So under pressure from the party, you can't even fully support your people's national, liberation movement because it's in conflict with America. So just having to hold that contradiction, because for me, honestly, I have less criticism of Rashida out of all of them, primarily because she is attempting to walk that line. But my major criticism is stop walking that line, sis. Like, doesn't make any sense. It's not a balanced line. It's never going to come to. And then I think that Ilhan Omar's position on the entire East Africa, like the entire Horn, is awful. It's awful. She may say something about Somalia, but she would never outright speak about the droning. She would never outright, not even speak about AFRICOM, but speak about Israel's relationship to the Horn, especially as she's condemning Israel for what they're doing to Palestine. But you can't talk about Israel and the Horn. Why not, sis? Like, what are we doing here? And then for the next one, who's just like too much, like when you said for the people outside of the U.S., they might not view the squad favorably because of their domestic, or excuse me, their foreign policy. Like, that is always this AOC right there. Like, I'm sure there's no socialist Bolivians that's a fan of her. You know, she supported a coup, and they all equally support sanctions, equally. Or if they don't so much as they do the present vote, they will still continue to give lip service about dictatorship and authoritarianism and all of these lines and languages and terminologies and frameworks that uphold and support the U.S.'s aggression against these nations, like in Venezuela. They were completely like, have they had any words about Cuba? I haven't seen anything favorable. I've seen them say, you know, don't shut down the protests, allow people to, you know, to making it seem as if Cuba is the aggressor here. You know, say this is their position with everything. If you hear about Iran, if you hear about Afghanistan, because the U.S. is in everybody's nation.
Right.
The U.S. is in everybody's nation. The U.S. is in every region of the world. So every country has a direct, like, you know, they come across U.S. militarism in some form or another, including right here, we come across it. It's taken on a domestic form. But I say that to say that in every ongoing aggression that the U.S. has right now, they have spoken or said things to support those aggressions, even if they are taking a lenient stand, or if they're trying to take like a more progressive and not say too much, or not seem like they're the Republicans, or not align themselves with warmongers and neocons, they are still, you know, throwing in that jab about dictatorship, throwing in that jab about authoritarianism, as if they don't know what that means. And all of that oppose the sanctions, especially when they talk about Maduro.
And also it always goes back and runs cover for the Democratic Party. That's what they do. Like, I think that the squad is like a great example of sort of the what comes out of that, like Bernie Sanders left, where it's like, you know, you talk a little spicy, you talk a little heavy about things that might happen here in the US, but as far as internationalism is concerned, there's not a strong sense of internationalism among them. And I also think that speaks to the importance of like organization and like who puts these people forward, like where do these people come out of. Like, just having the identity is not enough, right? Like, we talk about, like, you can be Palestinian, you can be Somalian, and like Hood Communist is publishing a piece today, Somali, I'm sorry, you can be Somali, you can be Palestinian, but Hood Communist is publishing a piece today that Erica wrote called the limits of lived experience. That's become sort of like a common thing where we see people who embody certain identities. So like, obviously their perspective of the conflict, you know, must be the right, must be the right take because they live in that body or that nationality or that race. But right. The squad again gives you concrete examples of how these things are just simply not true. What organizations is Ilhan Omar connected to where the organization has an anti-imperialist stance and is fighting to end AFRICOM? I don't know that such an organization that she belongs to exists. You know, like so that basically is just to say is just like an example more and more of like representation. It's beautiful representation, y'all. They're lovely, like, you know, people, and they talk nice and they're women, but like the politic isn't there. It's not there.
And I really appreciated when you pointed out, Erica, that Rashida Tlaib is a Palestinian woman in an extremely Zionist organization trying to change the extremely Zionist organization from the inside. It makes no sense. Like, they are openly hostile to your existence as a person. It's not going to happen.
She's essentially doing it on her own too. She's not really receiving much support from the squad, let alone Ayanna, because I know we haven't spoke about Ayanna Pressley a lot, but I think Ayanna Pressley gets covered a lot because she doesn't do the antics that the others do as far as all the tweeting, all the Instagram videos, but she's probably the least progressive of all of them. Like when you look at where she comes from and her backers in Boston and the deals made with the people who have donated to her campaign, or just the people who donate to her campaign in Boston, when you look at those type of things and the way that Ayanna kind of links herself to certain organizations, either in Boston, like when against policing, or what was it that was happening in DC? The fight against was it Sester Foster? She kind of linked herself with like a BYP 100 or other groups that were fighting or pushing these things on a congressional level. And that's how she kind of was able to walk Elizabeth Warren into those certain spaces as well. If we forget, because she was already having those type of dialogues with certain organizations where it was useful at the time, but then you have to also understand that this person has their own ulterior motives, they have their own interests. So it was not anything that was like a genuine, let me link up with these organizations to organize. Because Rashida Tlaib has also worked with BYP 100 about the Deadly Exchange Program, about Operation Relentless Pursuit, and all kind of different policing initiatives or anti-policing initiatives that's happening in Detroit. She does speak with those organizations that happen here. So I do want to be mindful, like they are in communication. Ilhan Omar took BAP's petition. Her office took Black Lives Peace's petition against AFRICOM. We handed it off to her office. So these people are in touch with organizations. They do have that space or are in close proximity. They just don't give a fuck. Because at the end of the day, they have special interests as politicians. And that's what I think that people don't understand that. People are approaching them like they're our fellow comrades. No, they are not our comrades. They are politicians and they represent us because we are their constituents. So we do kind of hold the strings. We can push them in directions, but what's happening is a lot of people are being led by them because because I guess they assume that they have actual power within their party. So they're being led by these people who are not doing anything concretely or material. And then I think Salifu made that point about the lived experience thing. That's what we see AOC doing now with pushing Puerto Rican statehood. So, is that a benefit for Puerto Ricans to become a state? And who's challenging that? Are we allowed to challenge that because she's Puerto Rican?
No.
Like, so those are the things that I feel like are not given enough attention, right? Because people are in love with optics. People love an optic, child. And if it seems progressive enough, we're just gonna ride with that and we're gonna support it and we're not gonna criticize it publicly because the bad Republicans and those establishment Democrats, this is what they want. But it's like we have to understand that none of these people have separate interests at the end of the day when you look at all of their interests on paper. I mean, they all may say different things. Nancy Pelosi says crap against the Republicans all day and all night. But she also says that abortion is not a hardline issue. So, like, you know what I'm saying? So these people, you have to understand that people, they say anything. What does it look like on paper? And I don't think that people are that interested in what it looks like on paper. And that's what we're seeing with foreign policy. People really are not interested in internationalism. So it doesn't matter because even when we have the presidential elections, there's no real focus on foreign policy. They could just skirt by that, give us anything. Next. We get like 5 minutes of foreign policy and 2 hours of them going back and forth about nothing. Because they assume that nobody cares about foreign policy, but we're not given the opportunity to care because they funnel so much of it through their own propaganda.
Were you going to speak, Salifu?
No, you said exactly what I was going to say right at the end, Erica.
So really what y'all are laying out is the squad functions as controlled opposition. Like going back to the extremely performative camp out in front of the House building after they let the moratorium expire without any kind of action. There's millions of people in the United Snakes facing eviction because of thousands of dollars in back rent that are owed thanks to these lockdowns where people were not paid to stay home. And so this is a situation where there's like a lot of anger, where there's like a lot of trauma, where like people are like, why isn't anything happening? And that's a situation that's very incendiary. Like it's a situation where people could like rise up. And what like, you know, the camp out in front of the house building did was pretend like something was actually being done, even though it was only a 90-day extension. And even though even that 90-day extension was overturned by the Supreme Court like 3 weeks later. So nothing actually happened to change the condition. But if you were watching the news and you're watching Cori Bush and AOC being like, we won, celebrate the victories, you would think, oh, I don't have to go out and flip over a cop car. They helped us out, so it's fine now. Like they serve as a release valve for righteous anger against a system which is failing millions of people within the United States and billions of people around the world. These folks give hope that this system can be reformed or somehow tweaked to serve us, when in reality, these people are not actually doing anything. So I feel like that controlled opposition piece is very important for folks to understand. And I also feel like the mystique of the squad depends on what Erica and Salifu just laid out, that people don't care about foreign policy in the United States, not because they're choosing not to care, but because it's intentionally downplayed by the ruling class. The United States is an empire with tentacles all over this planet. Like there's no corner of the world where the United States does not have some aspect of its empire. And so the idea that citizens of an empire don't care about empire shit is something that was like intentionally cultivated. And what the squad has been allowed to do is claim to be progressive domestically while aligning completely with foreign policy of an empire. And the progressive domestically is pure performance. Like we've already laid out, like nothing's actually happening. They're not actually working for you. But I want to talk about why it is that people who live in the United States believe that it's possible to be progressive domestically while being an imperialist abroad, because this was actually cover that was used for Bernie Sanders as well. Why do y'all think that happens?
So if you got
Okay, well, I think the quick and easy answer to that question is Western exceptionalism. But again, I as I come along in my journey of political education and trying to learn and understand and look at the reality here in the States in a very materialist way, like both of you have pointed out today, this is not because people born in America have some innate or, you know, organic, selfish nature about them. It's about programming. It's about social conditioning, right? Like we grow up being surrounded by propaganda messages that are all like America first. This is something I get very passionate talking about because I have like a bunch of little cousins. And when you listen to, even when you engage on a cultural level, to music, movies, television shows, all the messages that we are constantly getting every day, no matter the source, they're always about put yourself first. Like it's about you. Even this thing that the kids do online now about like, oh, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. I just have main character syndrome. Like it's really weird antisocial shit that programs us to not really even give a fuck about the people we live next door to. So then imagine expanding that outward to people in places that you've never been or that you'll never see. It's like a very sick and psychotic social programming that we have to recognize and actually want to like defeat. Like we have to want to like tear this cultural programming down. But I think the other proportion of it is because we are intentionally kept out of like progressive affairs and, you know, understanding what life is like in other countries, because we live in a country where Cuba is demonized everywhere. China is demonized everywhere. Any country that's ever fought against imperialism or tried to establish socialism is demonized within the US. Brother Obi says this all the time. It gave me chills the first time he said it, and I had to sit and think about it. We don't actually know what it feels like to win here. We have no idea what sovereignty looks like. We have no idea what freedom looks like. We have no idea what like an actual, like somebody, you participate in a process of struggle and a material benefit is won. We have no idea. We have no idea, which is why you can get on Twitter and be like, yeah, I'm in the government, but I hate the government too. And we'd be like, retweet. Because we just don't know. We just don't know. And so I think a part of our job as people who claim to be fighting toward revolution, or who claim to be wanting to free our people from these systems of domination, is that we have to like make these realities and these wins in other places like real and tangible for our people here. And yes, we have to be able to talk about what the victories of the Cuban Revolution actually meant for everyday Cuban people. Like, what does that mean to come from a generation of people who never owned homes, and then next year you own your home? That's like very important. We have to be able to talk about the socialist victories of China. What does that mean to be to lift an entire village or an entire section of your country completely out of poverty? We've never seen it. We've never done it. And so it's very abstract for our people.
I just want to ask, what is main character syndrome?
Okay, it's this thing where it's like, imagine your life is a movie. You're supposed to treat every day of your life like a movie, and you're the main character.
Okay, no.
I'd
be so worried about the kids. But yeah, I think that's a lot of the issues with it. I was actually revisiting a Black Myths podcast episode where he had Dr. CBS and he had Dr. Ball on, and they were talking about the ways that Brown versus Board of Ed sort of led into a reformative or was sort of the jumpstart for a reformation process, and like from all the radical change. And I was revisiting it because my book club just finished reading Race to Revolution by Dr. Gerald Horne, and there's a part in it specifically where he talks about Board of Ed and the civil rights movement that happened as a consequence was a direct consequence of the internationalism that was occurring. It wasn't just primarily because Black people here were getting too radical and too left. They were getting radical and left because they were aligning with other Black radicals, Black communists, Black left internationally. And that was all happening around, as Jim Crow. They were trying to stifle Jim Crow down because it didn't look good internationally, but they were also trying to stifle down anti-communism at the same time. So like anti-communism is a big reason why we don't see a lot of the internationalism that we have come to know from the Black radical tradition or the Black radical past, because they shut that shit down. We've been out propagandized, and we've been given these little reform efforts in order to kind of negate that. And that is how I view the squad. I don't think AOC is a socialist. I don't give a damn what she says. I don't even think Democratic socialists are socialists, but that's a whole nother show. But that's a whole nother show, because if you look at like what is Bernie Sanders doing? Like when you look at their anti-imperialism, it doesn't exist. So for me, I feel like that is what they're doing. They're trying to alleviate the socialism and the communism that's being pushed forward by the masses, because this is what they want. We're seeing more people being receptive to communism, being receptive to socialism, engaging it, trying to learn it, even anarchism. They're looking at all these different bodies and frameworks of structures and how to move that are outside of this capitalist structure. And what the squad does is say, no, you don't have to do that. We can have progression right here. You don't need to move to communism and socialism and all that other stuff. We don't need anarchism. We don't need any of that. What we need is just to change the hearts and minds of the establishment in the Democratic Party. And that's where the squad comes in, as the changers of the hearts and the minds of Nancy Pelosi. So it's like of a Jim Clyburn, who went around for months saying it's all their fault. They're the reason why 70 million people voted for Trump. Them, and you got to coexist with these people in the party. So I'm always trying to reconcile how it is that people don't see that contradiction blatantly, and how it is that people really feel that is a winning strategy for any of us. Like, because it's like, okay, so they didn't work, but perhaps we could try this next progressive. Oh, now there's a socialist in Buffalo. Let's just make sure that, she'll be the next, whatever AOC couldn't get done, let's just stand behind her. because she's a socialist. Or this one over here, they're a socialist too. But it's like, how many socialists are we going to put into the Democratic Party before we understand that this does not work? Before we understand that they collapse themselves on top of these people and nothing that they want to happen. And I'm being very generous here in assuming that they want progress to happen. But if that's the case, we're watching. They've been there since 2018. And what have they done significantly since 2018? And that is the question. That's the question that people have to answer for themselves. Like, how long do you keep this shit show going? Are we just going to keep going to spite the Dems? Or are we going to try to create a strategy outside of this, organize outside of this, build power, political power outside of this? And I think so long as the squad exists, and they exist in all these different bodies and all these different cultures and all these different identities, then it's going to be a lot harder to penetrate to the people that this is not the way. Because they're literally like lifting all of our terminology and all of our radical shit anyway.
Yeah, can I add something to the end of what Erica just said? So yeah, so everything that Erica just said, I feel like speaks to like a culture of individualism. And I saw somebody say this recently the other day, but like this assumption that we're working with, we're just going city to city to find another person, one more person, or maybe this person this time. It like makes this assumption that like we are somehow better or smarter than all the people that came before us that tried this and demonstrated that it did not work. We have blueprints. Africans in the US, we have blueprints via organizations like the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, who I brought up earlier, via the works of Kwame Ture, and many people who moved out, who came out of the civil rights era and entered the realm of radical politics, went into Black Panther parties of the world, the SNCCs of the world, who understood systems don't give a fuck about individuals. That's like not how any of this works. And so I think even as we have this conversation, there are still going to be people who listen to this and be like, well, what do y'all do? Because at least they're trying, right? So are y'all saying that it's bad to try? Are you saying that it's bad to try? And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that if there's any revolutionary potential that exists in electorism or state politics in the US, it is going to be on a collective basis. It would never work on an individual basis. It has to come directly out of the people. Any power that's going to be contended for here in this nation, I feel weird even saying that. But even if it does exist, it's going to have to come out of the masses of people. AOC is not your Jesus, bruh.
No. But also, as an amendment to what Mack said, I actually do want people to stop trying that way. I really do. I feel like there's been enough evidence that it's just not going to work, and that we do have the opportunity to try something else. Like, I'm not against electoralism, but we're not going to pretend that this is a democracy. It's an oligarchy. So, and then and let Daruba tell it, it's a garrison state. So like, what are votes going to actually accomplish? So I think that we need to probably reconfigure how we understand politics in the US and power.
Because we're trying to skip steps.
Right. And really understand who has the power and how do we build power? And I think that this is like, to Glenn Ford's genius, it's like we have never had a Black agenda, ever. And the squad is not going to deliver us one. They are not. And I think that we have to really be reasonable about that reality. And the only way that we can possibly get a Black agenda to even, be taken in or received by the masses of people is to organize towards one. And if we're not doing that, then there's going to be another AOC, just like there was in Buffalo. And it's going to be another, Rashida Tlaib. And it's going to be another Ilhan Omar. There's going to be more, like Cori Bush is the newer version of them. So we're going to keep seeing more and more newer efforts of this, so long as we don't organize to break out of that.
Y'all are a really good interview. I feel like you just neatly went through all of the remaining bullets, so I appreciate you. But the bottom line is that as Erica said, the squad are not our comrades. The squad does not actually work for us. The squad is aligned with the interests of the ruling class. The squad is in there to uphold the interests of the ruling class, and we have to understand that they are not our friends. They're not on our side. It's just if you examine the position they hold, if you examine what they're doing with it, it's very clear that we have to give up this hope in diversifying a ruling class party and instead build our own independent political organizations like Salifu just laid out, like Erica just laid out. And another point that was made earlier that I want to lift up is that they couldn't possibly, like, even if they wanted to, even if Cori Bush has like the best of intentions, if Cori Bush is not part of an organization that has like a revolutionary political agenda that is like holding her accountable to the masses of her people, Cori Bush, acting as an individual, cannot show up for us within that particular framework. Unless Cori Bush is part of a movement, which she is not, a movement that can hold her accountable, she can't do anything for us. It's the same thing with AOC. I remember when AOC came in, they were talking about she's a member of DSA, and then she started wilding out, and they were like, DSA, can you deal with it? And they were like, nah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she was like only on paper a member of DSA. Like, these people are acting as individuals within a ruling class apparatus. There's an extreme limit to what they can do, even with the best of intentions. So thank y'all so much for laying that out. And just to wrap up the interview, any closing thoughts you have and anything you want to promote, maybe like the live chat later today.
I was going to say that if you're not on our Telegram, what is it? Telegram/Hood Communist?
T.me/Hood Communist. I'll put in the chat as well.
.me/Hood Communist. That's it. So go ahead and join. We're going to be talking about celebrity-centered analysis and why you all need to stop that as well. And it's also Hood Communist Thursday. So be sure to check great material analysis this week, including my own. But and then join an organization fighting for the liberation and the freedom of your people. And when I talk about organizing or creating Black political power outside of the party, I'm not speaking ignorantly. I'm speaking as a member of a party, of a Black working class party attempting to do so right here in Maryland, Ujima People's Progress Party. So I do know that it is a struggle. It is a difficult thing to penetrate between these existing two parties, but it is well worth it, and it's necessary, and we have to do it, or we're just going to keep circling the drain. So that's my closing statement. Oh, and follow Hood Communists everywhere on everything.
Oh, sorry. So I guess the last thing that I want to say is that like this conversation was like a critique. We tried to pull apart like the squad and shed some light on what they're up to. But this is not a defeatist conversation, because I feel like sometimes people hear these things and they'd be like, all y'all do is complain. Y'all never have no solutions. Y'all don't never want to do nothing productive. No, we're dissecting what the problem is. But we highly believe that this shit is possible. Like, we got a lot of work to do. It's going to require a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hours, a lot of hands on deck. But there are alternatives. We're saying, y'all, is that like, let go of this dream that's being sold here. Don't invest no more of your time into this bullshit and come to death row. That's it. That's all we're saying. That's it. That's it.
All right, that was great. Thank you so much for joining, for bringing one of the livelier shows that we have had. Appreciate y'all so much, comrades. And read Hood Communist. Go to hoodcommunist.org. Read the new articles. Erica's is hot fire, and we'll expand on the analysis we shared on the show today. And then please join us at 5:30 Mountain Time this afternoon in the Hood Communist Telegram channel for a live chat discussion about the risks of celebrity-centered analysis. Thank y'all so much, comrades, for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.
Good luck, comrade. Peace, Africans.
Oh.
You could not hear me talking. I was talking right now, and I bet you could not hear me. I switched the camera because I'm high tech, and I forgot the audio. So again, that was Salifu, Mack, and Erica, both editors with Hood Communists, alongside myself and our comrade Ajamu Umi from the APRP. Strong revolutionaries, brilliant revolutionaries, sharing their analysis why we gotta give up on that squad, y'all. They are not gonna save us. They are not on our side. It's okay if you got tricked. It was a good trick, but we gotta see through it and fight for better strategies. So that was the PE. Thank y'all so much for joining us and for all your comments. I see the chat was like lit up with engagement, so we appreciate y'all. Also, remember to like this video wherever you're watching and share the video wherever you're watching so we can get this conversation in front of more eyes so we can start doing better. But we're going to keep it moving with the rest of the program. We want to share some updates about what we're doing here in New Mexico in Tiwa territory. So we, of course, have been actively building the Pan-African Community Garden with members of our community. It is a beautiful space that is going more and more beautiful every time we're out there. So last weekend, our comrade Bernadette from the International District Healthy Communities Coalition helped us build some pallets or some benches out of pallets. It's really incredible what you can do with pallets, man. Like, I am shocked. But she helped us build some benches out of pallets. And this past weekend, we decorated those 3 benches. We painted one black, one red, and one green for that Pan-African flag. We're up in the RBG of the Pan-African Community Garden. We also did some watering, some laying down of another layer of mulch. We did actually recently get the soil tested at the garden by a comrade. And the soil in the lot itself, we discovered has a high layer of lead. And so we're going to have to remediate the soil. We're going to have to heal it. And so that layer of mulch is the first step in doing so. It's going to break down. It's going to feed the soil. It's a little bit acidic, so it can help mitigate some of the lead in there. And we'll also be doing research on what we can do long term so that we can start actually putting food in the ground. But for now, we have a series of raised beds that were built with donated wood from the community that we are using instead while we remediate that soil. So we will be back out there this coming Sunday at 4 p.m. We're going to be finishing our garden signs. We're going to be finishing the benches, and we're going to be doing some more harvesting and planting of some fall plants. So it should be a good time. And we always, always, always do political education when we go out to the garden. Like I said at the beginning, you will never, ever, ever come to an APRP event without getting some aspect of political education. The garden is no exception. And so this coming Sunday, we're going to be reading together a speech by Samora Machel of Frelimo, which is a revolutionary African organization that fought an anti-colonial struggle in Mozambique. And in the speech, Samora Machel is talking about the importance of learning how to grow food, to produce your own food and goods during a revolution. So we're not just doing this to do it, we're doing it as part of a strategy to build the movement for revolutionary Pan-Africanism here in Tiwa territory. And that speech that we're going to read and talk about together breaks down precisely why. So it's going to be a good time. I'm extremely excited to share some of like the ideological basis for this community defense project of the garden with y'all on Sunday. So join us Sunday at 4 p.m. Also, every single Saturday, we are still doing our elder care program Deliveries. We started our elder care program actually at the same time as we started this show back at the beginning of the pandemic last spring. We knew that elders were at particularly high risk for catching COVID-19, a serious case, and suffering really serious complications. And so we were like, how can we serve the African elders in Tiwa territory? And this is what we came up with. So we deliver food, we deliver masks, we deliver political education, reading material to elders throughout Tiwa territory every single Saturday afternoon. If you know an elder, an African elder in Tiwa territory who could use that service, please reach out to us at aprpnewmexico@gmail.com or 505-295-0008, and we can get them added to our deliveries. And we're going to continue doing those deliveries for as long as we have the resources to do so. The pandemic is not over. We had a whole episode about the pandemic last weekend, or last Thursday rather, talking about how even though the Biden administration campaigned on listening to science, campaigned on having a better COVID response than Trump, the reality that we are living through right now is a situation where Biden has said mission accomplished, it's over. And now they're just saying, if you're not vaccinated and you get sick, it's your fault. Like, people are being straight up abandoned. We are seeing the cases rising to higher than they were now at the same point last year. We are seeing new variants of COVID-19 spreading across the United States, including variants that the vaccines are not as effective against. So this is far from over, y'all. It is far from over. We do events outdoors at the garden, but we are always social distance and we are always wearing masks. We are not going to be doing indoor events. All the folks in the NAPIP, when we're about town, we're wearing our masks. We're getting vaccinated because we understand that this is not over, and this winter, quite frankly, it's going to get a lot worse. So we want to encourage folks to continue to take the same precautions you were, even though the CDC said it's okay to stop wearing your mask if you're vaccinated last May for some ungodly reason. Please continue to wear your mask. Please continue to be very careful about where you go indoors and what you're doing when you're indoors. Please continue to understand that this virus is still very deadly. People are still catching it. People are still spreading it. It is very, very, very serious. It's not over, no matter what these people in charge say. Also, in terms of anti-imperialist organizing happening here in Tiwa territory, we have the Cuba Solidarity Car Caravan coming up on Sunday, September 26th at noon. The starting location will be announced shortly. I think we have one in mind, but we got to confirm it, so I won't share it. But those Cuba Solidarity Car Caravans happen every single last Sunday of each month, excuse me, at a different location. We usually ride up and down Central Avenue, honking our horns with our cars decorated with Cuban flags, and we talk to folks about why the United States is attacking Cuba, what those attacks look like, and why we, as people living in the United States, have a responsibility to show up against it, to fight for it to stop in solidarity with the Cuban people. So please come out to our Cuba Solidarity Car Caravan, Sunday, September 26th at noon. Starting location will be announced soon. What else is happening? What else? Oh yeah, so this coming Saturday, September 11th, we are having our monthly Pan-African film series, the September edition of our monthly Pan-African film series, in fact. And we are showing a documentary about a U.S.-backed coup in Haiti that deposed a man named John Bertrand Aristide, who was a democratically elected progressive president who wanted to create social programs to support the people of Haiti, that wanted Haitian resources to belong to the people of Haiti, Haitian land to belong to the people of Haiti, who had progressive ideas for Haiti. And the United States was like, no, thank you. And they overthrew him. They actually did it 2 times for the same guy. So we're going to be talking about the second coup that happened in 2004. And we're going to be showing a documentary about it called Aristide and the Endless Revolution, talking about why that coup happened and talking about what happened to Haiti afterwards. And it's a very good week to talk about coups. One, because September 11th is actually the anniversary of the U.S.-backed coup in Chile that deposed Salvador Allende and put in place a fascist dictatorship of Pinochet. It is also the same week that an AFRICOM and NATO-trained soldier led a military coup in Guinea that deposed Alpha Conde, who was a puppet of imperialism. But he wasn't a good enough puppet, and so these mercenaries trained by imperialist military apparatuses were like, let's get him out of here and replace him. It's not looking like it was a progressive move for Guinea, more of a sideways move for Guinea, and we're going to be talking about on Saturday why imperialism loves a coup, why this keeps happening in African countries, using the example of Haiti. So please join us this coming Saturday, September 11th at 2 p.m. Mountain Time for the Pan-African film series, Aristide and the Endless Revolution. So moving on to the closing, we are All African People's Revolutionary Party, New Mexico. My name is Onya Sanu. I'm an organizer with the New Mexico chapter. This is our program, Weekly Pan-African News. We do this every single Thursday at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, which means we will be back next Thursday with another program or on another topic. I believe we're going to be talking about Haiti and the earthquake and the vultures that swooped in to try to exploit it from the United States and the core group in the UN. So please join us next Thursday, 12 p.m., same time, same place for that show. We want to encourage you to head over to hoodcommunist.org to read the new articles on the site. Please check them out. Please share them. Please like them. Please discuss them in your study groups. If you disagree and you're African, write a rebuttal and submit that crap. We will publish it. So please check out Hood Communist. Please tell your friends to read Hood Communist. And also, if you have enjoyed this program, if you are listening to me speak, if you are a frequent watcher and you are not active in an organization fighting for justice, well, comrade, we need you to join an organization fighting for justice. Join an organization fighting to tear this system down. Join an organization fighting to improve the lives of your people and oppressed peoples all over the world because the capitalist system is creating a diverse army of sellouts to confuse us while they are leaving us to die and be evicted and live on the street in tents during a global pandemic, y'all. It's raggedy, but it can be stopped with organization of the masses of poor and working class and African and oppressed people, period. There are more of us than there are more of them. We are not outnumbered. We are, in fact, out-organized. And so to address that contradiction, it means we must be active in organizations fighting for a new system, fighting for a socialist system, or whatever system you subscribe to. We just all know this shit doesn't work. So join an organization fighting for justice. If the organization you want to see does not exist yet, build that organization. You just need 2 friends and a book to read together. That's all you need. That's all you need. So please join an organization or start an organization of your own. But either way, get active in an organization fighting for justice. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you on Saturday for the Pan-African Film Series. Stay tuned for some flyers for upcoming APRP events and some music. Have a good day.
This cut is that Mau Mau, that 21st century anti-colonial propaganda. Candace Antique, Pan-Africana, Fonte Confederation.
Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, You either run into it or you're running from it. Tell me, brother, where you're running? You're either running scared or you're running free. Tell me, sister, how you running? If you're the big tree and all the small legs, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away. Call me timber. Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, Only way to kill a beast to attack the root. Pull it up from the ground and destroy the fruit. You're either telling lies or you're telling truth. Tell me, brother, sister, what do you do? If you're the big tree and I'm the small legs, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away. Call me timber. Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, Off with this head, off with this head, off with this head, off with this head. I cut you down with my machete. I cut you down with my machete, Almost out of time. Gotta free your mind. Almost out of time. Gotta feed the minds. Everything we can do today. Sow the seeds for the next day. Sow the seed for the next day. The next day, the next day. Almost out of time. Gotta free your minds. Almost out of time. Gotta feed the minds. Everything we do today. Sow the seeds for the next day. Sow the seeds for the next day. The next day, the next day.